James at 16 will not be presented this evening, but will return next week at its regular time. Stay tuned now for a special 2-hour What Really Happened to the Class of 65.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
Hi, I'm Alex Ross.
The two pieces are sort of a type. They're both kind of recreations of artwork that existed in the 90s. In fact, this piece here for the Avengers is in most ways a recreation or a tribute to George Perez's poster version from the mid-90s, where he did a shot that featured in it a figure of Captain America that was very similar to what I've done here, positioning of the Vision or positioning of Hawkeye, and I believe a few other elements are very similar to that piece, and it's consciously so. I was building off that inspiration, but I kind of refitted my design to fill out bigger shots of the figures so that I was making a wider composition and getting in a lot of the same characters, but still not quite as many as what George himself did, because George's thing was always to try and get in the maximum amount of content into pieces that he did.
Really excited to talk about this brand new book that is coming out via Kickstarter. The Kickstarter campaign on the way right now, or it's happening right now. And I want to get the title correct. That would be Michael, help me out. What's the title again? It's something samurai, I know.
Graphic Samurai.
Graphic Samurai.
Graphic Samurai. Thank you, Dennis. Yes, indeed. The Art of Dennis Cowan. Yes. So guys, congratulations. It's 3 weeks away from wrapping up, but I know you've hit your goal. And we're talking today with Dennis Cowan and Michael Stadford. Good to see both of you. Welcome to Word Balloon.
It's good to
So
be
glad to be here, John. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, guys, truly, and I'm excited to talk about this. Now, Michael's going to be on for the first few minutes, and then he's got a bolt, and but we'll get started. Dennis, I read the article at comicbook.com, and that you were maybe like, I don't know if it's time yet for a Art of Dennis Cowan book, or even the idea of an Art of Dennis Cowan book. Tell me what Michael had to do to convince you, or others to convince you.
It was I think it's a good idea in the abstract, and in the literal, it's a good idea, but it's not something I would have done myself. That's all I've been trying to say. It wasn't like my first thought to do a book about myself.
Well,
Like,
sure.
you know what? Here's a good idea. Let me do a book about myself. And let me interview all my friends and see all the great things they have to say about me. I just, even saying that just sounds ridiculous. So several people had approached me before about the possibility of doing one, and I was always like, no, if you're depending on me to help you do this book, it won't really happen, because everything I look at, I'll reject, for the better piece that will never come. So, it was just a constant loop of me not ever getting anything done until my wife suggested that my friend Mike Stratford, put it together, because he's done these kind of books. He's a fan. He's a great writer. And he's incredibly organized and will actually see the whole thing through. The thing is, once you ask Mike to do something, then just be prepared to go all the way, no matter what it is, because he will go all the way until it's done, which is where we are now. He dragged this thing across the finish line and put all thousands of pages together, went through all the artwork. It's him, my wife inspiration, but it's his work that is responsible for getting this book done.
That sounds great. Michael, you were kind enough to not only alert me, and also we've discussed before, you helped me get Howard Chaykin to talk about his Fargo campaign. And that was a terrific conversation that I had with Howard. But for this one, you know, I was just reading again that comicbook.com article that you sent me, and yeah, man, there's a lot of heavy lifting going on. You did the interviews for the book, so you're writing the text of
Yeah,
what you know, and you know, so
yeah.
that's cool. But yeah, tell me, you know, and also you're digitizing all this art that I'm sure you know piles of art that Dennis has given you for the book.
Yeah, well, you know, they say when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work. And that's really what this project's been because, you know, Dennis is one of my best friends. He's been one of my best friends for a long time. And, you know, we never really get to spend enough time together. So even though we don't live that far apart, we live far enough apart for it not to be easy to catch
Right,
up on a regular basis.
right.
So to have an opportunity to you know just sit with him regularly and go through his career in a really relaxed uh, kind of environment, like the room that you're looking at now is the room that we did the interviews in. Um, for me was you know was a lot of fun. I learned stuff about him that I didn't know, and then to have an opportunity at the end of each session to bring home a large stack of original Dennis Cowan art to be able to scan and study, you know, was great. I really enjoyed it. So the heavy lifting comes now when we're doing the campaign and you know, doing these different things to make people aware of it and you know just keep it moving. And then once the campaign's done, we have to manage all of the assembly and fulfillment and all that stuff. And that's where the heavy lifting comes in. But the actual process of making the book was, you know, it was something I look forward to every weekend.
And somebody's helping you lay out the book. Who's the guy that's
Yeah,
gonna?
Jason Medley.
Jason Medley. I think his first job as an adult was with Milestone.
Yes, it
And
was.
Oh
so,
wow.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And
We
so
hired.
flash forward 30 years, he and I both are working at Warner Brothers at the same time, and he's working in the home entertainment department, designing advertising campaigns and DVD packaging. And so, you know, when I started working on this thing and I told him about it, he's like, "Oh man, you gotta let me take a shot. You gotta let me do it. You gotta let me do it." And I talked to Dennis about it, and Dennis thought, you know, here's a guy that I know that I can trust. So, you know, it's the three of us essentially.
Yeah, it's good.
That's great, Dennis. When you and Michael, did you guys ever work together? You guys have known each other a long time, but did you guys work together when Milestone was at Warner's or whatever?
Um, Scott,
Unrelated?
no, no.
Yeah, or was it unrelated? Yeah.
It was unrelated. I mean, um, s- Mike and I have done several projects together. Some of which have yet to see the light of day. One of which, you know, we're in now. We're talking about now. But I didn't work with him at Milestone in any kind of capacity like that. That was only
Okay.
Jason when he was a little
Okay.
kid, and we hired him off the street, which is true, you know. And now look at him. So
That's great. No, that's great, man. And I'm excited. I'm also excited. I know Michael's going to come back maybe in a couple months to talk about another project that he's got brewing
oh
that
my
he was telling
God,
me about off
that's
the
the
air.
real
So,
one. Yeah, that's the one. Like bring me back so I can talk about that. Even though I have nothing to do with it.
oh,
I just want to talk about it.
Dennis, I'd have you on every week if you had the time. Believe me,
I just want to talk about it. Shit.
you know, yeah, I get it. No, there's so much to talk about. Absolutely,
Yeah.
man. That's great. That's wonderful. So I'm excited for that. Um, and yeah, I congratulations. Let's spend a minute on the campaign itself.
Thank you.
Like I said, it's about 3 weeks left as
Right.
far as people contributing, but you've made your goals, so now it's time for all the stretch goals and stuff. And
Yes,
one
sir.
thing that Mike, you showed me is you guys have been doing, I guess, to create the text. You guys were doing video interviews, you know, to kind of talk about Dennis's career. And you showed me this amazing clip that I don't know. Do you want to reveal it yet, Mike, or is it on the
Yeah,
campaign
it's fine.
page?
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay, well, yeah, Dennis, it was about your first experience dealing with Vinnie Coletta, and you know, I gotta ask because you know he's a at best controversial character,
Did I talk
and
about Vinny in our
I
interview?
want you, I really want you to, if you would,
I talked
because it's
about
an amazing story.
I didn't even I don't remember half the things we talked about. Um, well, I don't know which story. Is it the one where when I first saw him and he looked at my
When you,
portfolio?
yeah, when Buckler
Yeah,
brought you
yeah.
in
No,
and with
I'm
your
like
portfolio.
14 or 15
Wow.
years old. This is right before I worked. I think this is before I worked at Continuity. I was working for Rich Buckler as his assistant. He had a number of assistants. But I was right in high school and I'm doing his backgrounds and stuff. And he would have me go with him to the offices up at DC and up at Marvel when he would go. And I would just tag along, which is how I ended up meeting just about everybody when I was a teenager, because I was with Rich or with Neil or with somebody like that. So I'm up there with Rich, and I have my portfolio of samples together. Marvel 2-in-1 with the Hulk and I mean, the Thing and Doctor Strange. Mike may have seen some of those, and whatever other samples I had. And Vinnie Coletta was the art director up there at the time. And I remember he had his own office. He had a big drawing table, white, Vinny had that white hair, black eyebrows, that New York Italian accent, that
Oh
attitude. And
yeah.
I'm not even going to describe anything else that was going on. Um, but Rich says, "Hey, Vinny, this is Dennis Cowan. Dennis, this is Vinny Coletta." And I'm thinking, "Oh my God, it's Vinny Coletta. He inked all those Thors. He ruined half of them, but they're still great. Um, um, he says, and Dennis would like to show you his portfolio. Rich leaves the room. Vinny, we close the door. I take out my portfolio. Vinny takes my portfolio and puts it on the drawing table, the whole book. I think it was the whole book. And he's looking through it like this. He just flipped through it. One, two, took a puff cigar. Three, four, another puff of the cigar. Five, six. He may have looked over all 8 pages, puffed the cigar, closed the thing, handed me my portfolio back. So now I'm waiting to see what he's going to say. And he looks at me and he says, "He's a good kid, but we already have a colored artist working here." And he was talking about Trevor Von Eden. You know that kid, Trevor
Yes.
Von Eden on Black Lightning. Yeah, we already got a colored artist working here. So, you know. Now I was so naive at the time. I'm thinking, well, maybe they only have room for one black artist, and they don't hire any others. Like I don't even know what the hell's going on. So, but I'm clearly dejected.
Well, sure.
So I walk out, and Rich says, "So how'd it go?" And I told him what Vinny said. Well, he says they already got a colored artist. He didn't say black, he said colored.
I'm
That I
hip. Yeah.
remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Rich looked at me, Vinny said, "What?" And I repeated again. So Rich turns on his heel, opens the door to Vinny's office, and starts yelling at him. Like, "How dare you talk to this kid like that? Don't you know, blah, blah, blah. He's a black kid, and you want to say you already got colored artist work? Vinny, what's wrong with you?" He just dressed him down. Vinny didn't give a shit, really. He just looked at him and whatever, kept smoking his cigar, like, "Yeah, well, we do have a colored artist working here, and he's good," and blah, blah, blah. They got into it. Then Rich was like, "Let's just get out of here." So
Jeez.
we leave. And that stuff, that stayed with me for a long time. So the follow-up to that is maybe 5 years later, I'm drawing Power Man and Iron Fist for Marvel Comics. And Jim Shooter's my boss. I forget who my editor was. It may have been Al Milgram or somebody, but I mostly dealt with Jim Shooter. And I'm up at Marvel delivering pages, and Jim Shooter pulls me aside and he says, "Hey, let me talk to you for a second." Sure. He says, "Vinny Coletta wants to, we're looking to give Vinny some work and he needs some work. Do you think he could work over you, Power Man and Iron Fist?" I said, "No." I didn't even hesitate. "No." "Well, why not?" Jim said, because he's like, "Why not?" I said, "Well, Vinny don't work on no colored artist work. So what does he want to do with me? Like, I'm a colored artist. Like, no, I don't have time for this." And I was really like, I never wanted to see him again after that and didn't want to see him then. "What if he apologizes to you?" I said, "I don't know how is he going to apologize to me, Jim, but okay, whatever." Next thing I know, I'm sitting in a lobby of Marvel Comics looking at Vinnie Coletta apologizing to me up and down for everything he had said. But it was that kind of apology that's not an apology. I don't remember saying anything like that, kid, but if I did, I certainly apologize. Now, inside, I'm cracking up because I'm like, what the fuck? You don't even
Sure.
remember the horrible shit you said to a 15-year-old kid trying to
God
derail
damn.
my shit and ruin me. And now you're
Yeah.
sitting on the couch at Marvel, not begging me for work, but begging me because you know you need to get on and blah blah blah. So I agreed. I said, Vinny, no problem, no problem. Said,
Wow.
yes, you can ink it. Go ahead, ink it, and he did. So
Wow.
you'll see this one issue of Power Man Ifis that Vinny Coletta inked, but that's the reason why. It's because
Interesting.
he came and apologized to me and asked me, you know, can I please ink this? He just needed the work. So we're in a tough business anyway. So to be an asshole in it is like it's like you're limiting your options really because you're going to run into these same people all the time. It's
Yeah.
not that big. It's not 100,000 people in it. Maybe a
Sure.
thousand. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And certainly
Maybe.
back then, yeah, and back then in the 80s,
So
probably not.
so Vinny ran right into my colored behind right again, and
Wow.
there it was. So
Damn.
that's the story.
Well, that's seriously, I'm really glad that, you
Totally happy like that.
Jesus. Well, and you'll forgive me because I never heard a story like that. I would always tell people that Vinny did a solid to Englehart and Marshall Rogers for the Lashing Fish story, and I'm glad you're
I believe that.
nodding and you know that. Yeah. So
I believe
it
that.
is
Yeah,
eye
because he's
opening and
capable of
disappointing.
doing something like that to me. That does, and you know what? I can't even say he was prejudiced or racist. I don't know what Vinny was. Vinny was a fucking 50-something-year-old guy from New York. That's what
Yes.
white guy from New York, from
Yeah.
God knows where in New York. So that's who Vinny was, an Italian dude.
Yeah.
So he was who he was. I met plenty
Jeez.
of people like that. And
Well,
they're not walking around calling black people, whatever, and they're not kicking black people or doing whatever. They're just existing,
that
So
that's Jesus. And really, I think back and correct me if I'm getting people wrong. Ron Turner Marvel 2-in-1 isn't Ron a black, and maybe no, I'm getting the wrong last
Ron
name.
Wilson, Ron
Ron
Wilson.
Wilson. Thank you. Shame on me.
Yeah.
Super boxers.
Yeah,
He and I bonded over boxing.
I
Absolutely.
used to work for Ron. So it was Ron. I used to do backgrounds for Ron. I did backgrounds for Art Bell Jones.
Okay.
I did not do anything for Keith because he would not let me near his work. Um,
Which Keith?
Keith Pollard. He would not
Keith
let me,
Pollard. Okay, yeah, that's
he would
another
not
one.
let me
Yes,
anywhere
sir.
near his work. It was too good.
Yeah.
You're not messing up my work. Um, but Ron will let me do things and Arbel will let me do stuff. And they taught me a lot.
Okay. But yeah, literally, I think that those are the three that I can think of as far as black creators, including yourself.
Well, there
Jesus.
was Billy Graham, there was me,
Yes. And of course, back in the day,
Ron,
Matt,
Arbel, Keith. There was an inker named Aubrey Bradford who inked several of those Luke Cages that Ron Wilson drew. You can look them up. There were a
yeah,
few black
yeah.
artists. There were a few black artists during
Okay.
Ed Davis.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I appreciate that, man, because truly, I always want to get history right. And who, Matt from the Golden Age,
Oh, that's
the
Matt
guy,
Baker.
Matt Baker, of course, all the
Yeah,
great Phantom Lady stuff, among other things. Beautiful
yeah,
artist.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Geez. Well, and again, maybe one of the reasons why you and the collective got together to do Milestone when you did in the early '90s and really kind of make a statement with
Yeah,
those books.
yeah, of course. All those things informed me forming Milestone. One, you wanted to work with your peers, and two, I just need because that because all those characters didn't exist. In order to bring them to life, we had to create them, right? There were no black
Yes.
superheroes or transgender. There was nothing like that to work on. There was nothing like that so we had to invent it, and that's what we did.
Yeah. We'll get into Milestone more, but I do
Sure.
want to go back. So was Buckler your first pro that really took notice of you and really helped you out?
Buck was the first one. Yeah, I was in high school. Armando Gill, who was an inker, a guy named Ken Landgraf, who was a artist. He did some stuff, Nightwing and Flamebird at DC. He did some stuff. They were both really Rich's assistants. Armando Gill went to my high school, the High School of Art and Design.
Oh, great.
So I'm eating lunch and I'm looking at this guy's inks, and he's a very friendly guy, says, "Hey, you want to come with me? I'm going to go meet Ken Landgraf. He works with Rich Buckler after school." Went with him after school, met Ken, ended up meeting Rich, and ended
Wow.
up working for Rich. At 14, he didn't pay me any money. I've often said this, he paid me in albums. So he would give me albums. Yes. Bruce Springsteen, Earth, Wind and Fire, Stevie Wonder, Songs in the Key of Life. He gave me all kinds of stuff. And it was great. What was I going to do with money anyway? So,
Hilarious. Oh my God. I'm
yeah,
really lucky. I got a Buckler Deathlock sketch from him at a
yeah,
show, 20 years ago.
yeah,
And
that was
I'm so
awesome.
happy that I got it. Yeah. Oh yeah, great loss. No, he was amazing. Yeah, so did Rich get you to continuity with Neil Adams?
No, Rich, Rich got me up at DC and Marvel and places like that. So I knew people. Um,
Okay.
and I think I knew some of the people at Continuity. No, my high school had an internship program. I went to the High School of Art and Design, and they had an internship program where you could be placed in a work environment from your classroom. So you would go and work like at a Continuity or at a Xerox or whatever. They wouldn't pay you, be an unpaid intern, but you get the experience of working in a real place.
Sure.
I knew Neil and those guys, but this thing was coming up. So I was able to suggest myself, like, maybe I can go to Continuity and go work with them. And they were like,
Yeah.
the school said yes, and Continuity said yes. So I ended up going to Continuity, and I don't even know if I ever really went back to school. I think I went back to get my diploma, maybe, but that was it. I was already working. So yeah.
And
So
it,
I went
it's
to Continuity. Continuity was out of high school, but it was out of high school internship program. So I worked for Rich first, and then Neil and then everyone else.
that's cool. Did you do any continuity those comics that Neil was doing in the early
I didn't
90s
do
and
any
stuff?
continuity comics. When I first went to Continuity, you won't believe this, but he was working on the cover to Superman Muhammad Ali.
Oh, awesome.
That's
I've
when I
talked to
was
Neil
first
about
up
that.
there. That's when I was
Yes.
first up there, and I saw him working on
Wow.
the cover and putting the Jackson 5 in and putting all, and I was
Yes.
like ripping. Oh my God. He never let me work. I was not good enough to work on any of the comic books. I think I did Skate Man or something, like
Okay.
panels.
Sure.
And then I did I did some strips for Gray Morrow, who didn't work at
Oh, of course.
Continuity,
Oh my
but
God.
Gray was
What a
up there.
great
So he
artist.
was doing the Heart of
Yeah.
Barbara Cartland, and he was doing all this stuff. So I would help him a little on that, just messing everything up. Neil had me mostly working on storyboards and animatics and those kinds of things. So
Okay. Okay. And it's funny because I don't think of you as an inker, obviously. I think of you as a penciler. And I
yeah,
think of all the people that have worked with you that
yeah,
have inked. I didn't know about Vinny, but certainly, Sienkiewicz, you guys on the question, things like that.
yeah.
So yeah, but yet you broke in as an inker, you would say, and as
No,
far as or no? Okay,
no,
tell
I
me.
didn't break it as an inker. You mean when I got comic book work?
Yeah.
No, I broke in as a penciler. I broke in as an artist.
Okay.
Um, I didn't really do a whole lot of inking. Even my early stuff, like any of the inking I did or stuff like that was always at Continuity was on animatics and storyboards and stuff like that. I didn't really ink a whole lot of comic book pages until later.
Okay. Okay. Um, Geez, I mean, some of your great runs, going back to the question, and I was a Denny O'Neil fan from his Batman work, and as an editor, I was always happy when I saw his name on a book. And God, that question run with the two of you and Sienkiewicz was just
Thank you.
exceptional. And what how did you approach it? Because really, Ditko was really our when we think of the question, and Charlton just reprinted the hell out of those handful of Ditko question stories. But yeah,
Yeah.
what was your feeling drawing the question, and what were you going for?
Um, well, it's interesting because I know Ditko had done it, and I looked at Ditko's version of the question, and in fact, there was like a short story that was published, a black and white story even that was published that Charlton did, that Alex Toth did a question story too, right? So
Okay,
Ditko did the question, Alex Toth did the question. I remember looking at both of those. There was no way I was ever going to draw like Alex Toth or Ditko. No way at all. The only thing I could do was copy the clothes, maybe. the short pork pie hat and whatever.
Sure.
But that was it. I had to do it in my own style because I couldn't do Ditko. Um, so that's you ended up getting what you got because of the things I couldn't do, not because of all the things I could. If that makes any sense.
It does, but it,
Yeah.
it it still was amazing, and it was just so
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
to see
And
fresh question stories. Yeah, tell me
yeah,
more. Yeah,
and
please.
one of the things that I remember distinctly about working on the series, because it helped me a lot and it taught me, probably that series is the one that taught me how to do comics, right? But one of the things that Denny insisted on that I didn't realize had shaped me so much until years later was that there are no sound effects in the question. No pows, no biffs, no
Wow.
bang, no
Yeah.
nothing, no explosion sounds, no nothing. So Danny did that on purpose. He didn't want that distraction. He didn't want that artificiality. So I ended up drawing all these scenes of fight scenes and doing all this stuff and trying to make it convincing, but I never had to rely on sound effects or anything like that because I didn't have them. And I never thought about them. So everything I drew was to have maximum impact. So you did that for yourself. So as my career went on, then I got to deal with I mean, not word balloons, but with sound effects and stuff. Not easy for me. I never really needed them because, I was just so used to working for years without them.
Well, the language of comics really changed in the 80s because another thing that went away were thought bubbles.
Yes.
I mean that's so it's really great to hear that
Yeah.
because as a reader, as it was happening, okay, I didn't notice
You
that
didn't
there were
even
no
notice. You
bangs
didn't
and
even
biffs
notice there
and
were no
booms.
word balloons. No.
Yeah.
Now that I'm telling you, you'll notice. But
Yes.
it wasn't until now, this second, that you realize that that didn't even exist in that book. Not
That's
one
fantastic, man.
single thing, nothing.
Well, it was another form of realism that was coming to comics at that time. And hey, man, I enjoyed the classics and everything, and Kurt Swan and doing Superman, and all the great artists that did Batman. Was there a Batman artist that you try to model yourself at all after, or again, was it just your own thing?
No, 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 no. There were several Batman artists that I really loved. Like when I was at Continuity, Marshall Rogers had just finished his Batman run. So that stuff was influential on everybody, you know. And Marshall was really an architect who kind of got into comics. That's that's kind of the vibe that I always got from him. So
Wow,
beautiful work. Um, um, Neil Adams's Batman was big for me, but the biggest Batman was Jim Apato's.
sure,
Jim Apato's detective run from the early 70s, 72, whatever that was, up until perfection. The one with Sergeant Rock, all that stuff.
yeah.
All that stuff. That was
Oh yeah.
huge. It still impacts me to this day, that work, that artwork.
Did you
Just
have a
tough,
chance?
masculine, you know. He combined really Milk and Nif, and what Jim Aparo did, some people differ, is he kind of combined Milk and Nif with Neil Adams. That's what he did to come up with this kind of unique, hard-hitting style that was just so tough, and just so dead on. Um, so he was the biggest influence on me, as far as my Batman and a lot of my work. I wanted to draw guys in suits that look like Jim Aparo dudes. I wanted to draw the Question looking like, the Spectre dude, that detect.
Jim
I
Corrigan.
wanted to. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I know. I get it. I get it. That's amazing. And listen, I respected the hell out of Neil, and I'm sorry that Neil isn't with us anymore. And one of my first conversations with him, I referred to Jim doing a version of Neil's Batman, and Jim corrected me, said, no, no, no. So it's interesting, and I appreciate what you're
Jim
saying.
corrected
But
you, or Neil corrected you? Who corrected
Neil corrected me, and Neil's like, hey, no, no, no. He's like, listen, Jim was his own man. And I loved hearing that. I'm like, well,
you?
that's great.
Told
Yeah.
you. Yeah, he respected Jim Aparo because you had to, and plus Jim Aparo did it all, penciled, inked, and lettered. Page a
Wow.
day.
Well, I didn't know about
Page a
lettering.
day.
Damn.
Yes, he
Damn.
lettered. Page a day.
Wow.
Page a
Did you
day.
ever talk to him? Did you ever get a
I met
chance to
him
talk to him?
once. I met him once and nearly fainted.
I bet.
It was at a cartoonist. It was at one of those cartoonist things, um, like the Cartoonist Society or something. I've been
Yeah,
invited
the New York group. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in the 80s. And
Okay.
and late 80s, maybe early 90s, must have been the late 80s. And I'm sitting next to Dick Giordano, who kind of took me under his wing. And all the greats were there that night. And everyone had suits on. I remember that. So
Okay.
the script dudes who were still alive, they were there. And I was sitting next to Jim Aparo. They sent me next to Jim Aparo.
Wow.
Dick Giordano, me, Jim Aparo, and probably Gil Kane or somebody like that.
Okay.
I couldn't even speak during the whole meal. I'm just sitting here, and Jim Aparo. And here's the other thing: it struck me because Jim Aparo did not look like I thought he was going to look. Jim Aparo was a small guy, bald-headed, very, unassuming, very quiet. Wore suits, very neat. Didn't look anything like, Bruce Wayne that he drew, like these hard, tall dudes. Didn't look any, I knew he was going to look like that, did not. So I remember being nonplussed by that and just being in shock that I was even sitting next to Jim Aparo. So I didn't say much to him except, hello, how are you? I'm a big fan. And then I just tried to draw all the energy from him that I could. That's all I did.
That's on. I hope you don't mind that we're talking about some of these
I don't
guys
mind.
that influence you and everything, because I'm always fascinated. So how did Dick Giordano help you out?
Dick Giordano's the one who hired me on the question. It was
Oh, okay. I,
yeah.
I thought it might be Mike Gold, but that makes sense because he was the executive editor back then, or
No,
the.
Dick was the editor in chief or
Oh,
whatever
pardon me.
or art director at DC, and it was a Friday afternoon and nobody was there. I think I was hanging out in Andy Helper's office delivering the Vigilante, last pages of the Vigilante or whatever I was doing
Wow.
at that night.
Yeah.
And Dick poked his head in and said, "Hey, Dennis, come with me." Busy? No, come with me. So I went to his office and I sat there and he says, "Hey, have you ever heard of a character called The Question?" This is like 4:30 in the afternoon, 5 o'clock. I said, "Yeah, that's the one Steve Ditko drew." He goes, "Yeah. Well, the artist who was doing it can't do it. He dropped out. Do you think this is something you'd be interested in?" I said, "Sure," having no idea, except I knew it was a guy in a suit and a hat, but I didn't know what it was really about. But I'm like, well, sure. So he gave me the script, gave me Denny's script, and made me take it home over the weekend and read it. And Monday when I came in, I'd already agreed to do it. Monday when I came in, I think he marched me um, to Mike Gold's office and opened the door. And I think Denny was in there for some reason. I remember Denny looked at me and I looked at him because Denny was my editor on Power Man and Iron Fist, right? And he gave me a
Yep.
hard time every panel because I sucked so bad. So he had me redo everything all the time. Oh my God. So now I'm running into him again and he's looking at me like, "Oh my God, you." And I'm like, "Oh, Daniel O'Neill's the writer on the question. I'm doomed." So, but it turned out to be okay. It turned out to be, 3 years, 4 years of him picking every panel apart and me having to do everything all over again all the time.
Really? The
Yes,
whole time?
not the whole
Damn.
time, but certainly for the first year. Yeah,
Okay. Well,
yeah.
and I know obviously he was taking what Ditko did and literally
He
that
flipped
great
it.
scene
He
at
just
the
flipped
end
it.
at
Yeah,
the
he
end of
just
the
flipped it
issue.
on its ear and took all
Yeah.
that stuff and just made it into something very special. But
Very metaphysical, absolutely. No, and all of his philosophies that Denny was
it was
getting
Vertigo
into.
before Vertigo. That was
Amen. I,
yeah.
I am so with you. Absolutely,
Yeah.
Dennis. No. So how did you and Bill Sienkiewicz get together then?
I've known Bill, again, it's one of those things. I knew Bill when he first got in the industry. We both got in around the same time. He's a little older than me.
Okay.
So I met Bill, I was 16, he was already 18. Or if I was
Okay.
18, he was 20, like
All
that.
right.
Um, uh, just tracked him from his first stuff at Marvel. He came to visit Continuity. I remember that visit very well because Neil was impressed with his work and I was just blown away. I was there when I happened to be sitting in the lobby when he came up to DC Comics and had an appointment. And then later on that day, he was at Continuity because I'm working for Neil at Continuity. So this same guy walks in and I'm like, "Whoa, who is this dude, this young dude?" So then he opened his portfolio because he was showing it to Neil and we were all blown away. And I thought, well, there's just no way I can ever draw as good as this. So just forget that. Um, but even Neil was impressed. Even Neil was impressed. So Neil sent him over to Marvel. And then he picked up Moon Knight. Swear to God. "Jim, I'm sending someone over. You got to see this kid." To Jim Shooter. And Jim Shooter's like, "Okay, send him over."
Wow. That's great. And I've been fascinated when Bill inks other people
Sure.
because it sometimes it really might radically change the initial pencils. I think back to when Bill was working with Mike Norton on Green Arrow in the 2000s, and
Right.
I know Mike's style, and it was very different. Did you? How did that work together? Did he take your pencils and do anything different, or did he just enhance what you gave him?
Six and one, a half dozen of the other. It just depends on what the job was and what his mood was and what we were doing. He's always leaned into the job, whatever the job required. If it was something elaborate and I didn't draw it quite elaborate enough, he'd bump it up. If it was something action packed, he would just ink it, and not really worry about anything. Um, it just depends on what it is. His approach is always different. All our jobs do not look the same. So even our covers do not look the same. He just does different things, and I try to do different things. So
Did they ever finish collecting all of what you guys did on the question? Because goddamn, what a great run!
yes, I think all the omnibuses. I don't know if
Okay.
they collected all the annuals though, because we
Mm.
did like four annuals,
Oh yeah,
right? Bunch of
yeah.
stuff like that. I don't know if they ever got that, but I know there was like three omnibuses, or at least two. I have them here somewhere.
My first conversation with Denny was when that novelization of your guys' run came out, and he added things to it,
Yeah,
but it was just great. And again, it was like, oh God, here's a chance to talk to Denny O'Neil about the question. Are you kidding me?
I
Yes,
know.
please. So
I know.
yeah, no, dude, it was not only Vertigo before Vertigo, but it was a callback to crime and noir.
Yeah,
And so were there noir influences in what you were drawing? I mean, yeah, where'd you
of
get
course,
your look from for that?
of course. No, I was looking at all the noir movies. Double Indemnity,
Sure.
um, um, all of that stuff, all that stuff. Maltese Falcon, you know, um, just all the Douglas Sirk movies. Like I just looked at
Yes, love Douglas Sirk. Good
yeah,
call, man. Oh yeah.
I just looked at all that stuff. And interestingly enough, drawing the question, I always saw and still do to this day, see all the comic books I draw in black and white, like they were a black and white movie. I don't see anything in color. I see everything in terms of gray and black and white and tones, right? So I think all that stuff had a profound influence on me, and it carried out through my career. I wish I would have thought in color more because I'd be a fantastic artist, but I
Who
leave the
who
color to
call
other people.
who colored the question stuff?
Tatiana Wood, Wally Wood's ex. Tatiana Wood.
Wow.
Yes.
Interesting. Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Because there was a period in the 80s where sometimes the coloring or whatever the process was, it got heavy-handed. I remember
Right.
Gene Colan, some of his mid-80s stuff got
Yeah.
drowned
Yeah.
in
With
whatever
that,
the
that
finished product was.
oversaturated color. We didn't have that problem.
That no, you
It was
didn't.
also the
No.
paper. We were just on newsprint, black color. Let's go.
Okay. I understand.
Yes, my
Um,
sister calling me. Hold on.
oh, by all means.
I am on a Zoom interview. I will get off and call you right back. Okay. Okay, I'll call you right back. Sorry about
I
that.
don't want to mess you up, Dennis. How much
That's all
time do
right.
you think we get? Okay, good. I appreciate it. Because yeah, I go. I
I was late,
and
so
the viewers and the listeners are happy when we go. So no, thank you about that. Well, Milestone in its own way, and it was around the same time, was its own revolution, just like the Image guys were. So can you tell me about those beginnings in terms of like you guys getting together and going, no, we got to do this. Like you just yeah, what was it like being in those kind of initial discussions?
the initial idea came from me for Milestone. It kind of happened at like a 1990, 1991. Well, actually starts before then. I've told the story before. It started with Jim Steranko. And Jim Steranko was having an exhibition at the New York Comic Con. I was in his space looking at all the comic books that he had up on the walls and looking at the stuff that he had. I had been in the industry already, done the question, done stuff. So people knew me and I knew Jim. I knew him from continuity. He would come up and visit Neil. I just knew people. So I'm looking at his stuff and he sees me. He says, "Hey, Dennis, come here for a second." So I went over to him and I said, "Hey, Jim, what's going on?" He's like, and he has me against a wall with his artwork. And he's standing there. And Jim's a guy, he's not a tall guy. But I've often said this, for some reason, he feels like he's taller than you, you know? Like, so he's talking to me. He says, like, the people at Marvel had approached him and asked him to create black superheroes for them. And he thought that he wasn't the right person to do anything like that. And he looked at me very pointedly and he said, "Do you know anyone who would do something like that, Dennis? Because it seems to me that's a job for somebody who's really into that kind of thing. And I don't know, Dennis, do you know anybody?" Like he kept looking at me saying, "Dennis, Dennis, Dennis." And it was
Vincent.
like a light bulb went over, like that was a beginning, a milestone for me because I had never even thought about creating any kind of characters for anybody. Even though I love comics and doing all that stuff, I never thought about creating characters like that. Then that's all I thought about was somehow getting some people together and doing something like that. I couldn't do it by myself. Well, maybe I could do a bunch of sketches and bring them up to Marvel, but that wouldn't do it. So I had to figure it out. And maybe like 3 years later, I'm at a San Diego Comic-Con and I'm thinking about what the image guys have done and I'm thinking about where the industry is now. And I'm thinking it's now or never. So I literally I got to call Dwayne, who happened to be at the Comic-Con. Called Dwayne. We took a
Dwayne
walk. So
McDuffie.
called Michael Davis first. We took a walk around.
Okay.
And he said that you're crazy. This will never work, but I'm with you. Then we called Dwayne and we took a walk around Comic-Con, the marina and all that stuff. And Dwayne listened to
Yeah.
my whole said, "You are nuts, man. You are so nuts." But he also said, "We can't just make this about black people if we want to do it. It's got to be about everyone who doesn't have a voice." He really said that. And I'm like, "Well, I'm ready to do it about black people. I don't know about everybody else who doesn't have a voice." But in order to get Dwayne, we had to go that way. And he was right. So that's how it really started. It started at with Jim Steranko, but then really blossomed at that San Diego Comic-Con. And after that, we would meet for about a year, getting it all together. So by the next Comic-Con, we're being introduced as Milestone.
Wow. How many of these initial characters were you like, Icon
We
and
did a whole
Hardware and
Milestone Bible,
Static?
right? We did a whole Milestone Bible. So we did Icon, who was called Paragon at first,
Okay.
Static,
Yep.
Hardware, and the Blood Syndicate,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Um, But we also had a bunch of other characters already developed and done. And in the Bible, we had created a whole universe. So we had our backup characters, we had their cast, we had where they lived, we had the layout of their homes, we had their where they were in relation to each other, what subway you took to get to where, everything laid out for this world of Dakota within a city that did not exist, but we needed it to exist to tell our stories. So we did a lot of preliminary work to answer your question on all of it, way before anyone saw anything.
That's amazing. And yeah, what a good Lord, what a splash in the early 90s when you guys hit. In fact, the poster behind you right now,
Mhm.
the date that you debuted, February 27, 93.
Yes, sir.
That's fantastic, man. No, absolutely. Tell me about the static animated experience because that is a show that and I don't know how involved you were
I was
on
very
the on.
involved. I was
Oh,
very
there you
involved.
go.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, tell me about it.
The idea came from a guy named Alan Burnett, who was a showrunner up at Warner Brothers.
Sure, Batman the Animated
Yeah.
Series,
And
among other things. Yeah.
Alan was great. And I had been working over at Nickelodeon or at Klasky Shupo, which was a studio that did work for Nickelodeon. And I
Okay.
got a call from Alan saying that, and I knew Alan from my days at Milestone, right?
Sure.
So he said, "Come on up. I have an idea. I want to pitch Warner Brothers. I want to talk to Warner Brothers about Static." Like, okay, so I went up and met with Alan and we talked about it and discussed it. And next thing I know, I'm at lunch with the people from Warner Brothers and some people from Warner Brothers, from the network, and the people from Warner Brothers Animation, right? So I'm with the network people and the anime people, and like we're all talking. They're asking me about Static, and I'm describing Static to them, who he was, and blah blah blah.
Sure.
So then, we have a great lunch. We finish, and at the end of lunch, they say, "Okay, I think we're going to do this show." Now, at this point, I'm like, "Wait, what?" They're like, yeah, I think we're gonna do this show. We're all excited about it. Now I'm like, wait, did we have a lunch where we're pitching this show? Is that what this was? Because I had no idea that that's really what it was. I was just talking about the characters in the show, the characters in the
Yeah.
comic, having a great time and just yucking it up or whatever. And I thought the real meeting was going to happen when they told me the real meeting was going to happen. Okay, we're going to go in and sell the show. Nope, nope. It was that informal lunch that did it. So
Wow.
next thing I know, I'm directing on the show.
Jesus. How
That
many
was great.
episodes how many episodes did you guys end up doing? How
We
many
did
seasons?
4 seasons.
4 seasons. Yeah.
Yeah,
Jesus. That's amazing, man.
yeah.
And really, and it's great because, unfortunately, Milestone only lasted as long as it did. How many years was the comics back then?
Oh gosh, we started in what, 90?
93. 5
I don't
years.
know, till 2000. Like
Oh, that long? Okay,
Right,
cool.
no,
Yeah, yeah.
it wasn't like 96. It was like maybe 98, 99. I don't know
Okay. Well,
when
and
they stopped.
I'm
But
okay. And
I was gone from Milestone before they stopped publishing. So I was already working in Hollywood and doing all that.
that's great. So obviously you did animation, you said, for Nickelodeon before the Static Show and everything. What other Hollywood work did you do? Did you do storyboard stuff for
I
movies
did
and
a lot
things
of
too?
storyboard stuff. I worked for DreamWorks. I worked
Sure.
for Klasky Shupo. I did stuff for Nickelodeon. I did stuff for Deke Entertainment, the people who did Sabrina, the
Oh
teenage,
yeah,
all that stuff.
of
I mean,
course.
I just bounced around using my artistic talent.
Will that stuff be in the book? Any of that
I don't know.
animation?
Some of it may. I don't know how a lot of it
Okay.
is near.
Okay. I mean, obviously, there's enough of a body of comic books
Yeah.
that it's not necessary, but it'd be interesting to see that stuff, as far as that goes. Um, I don't even know what is the current status of Milestone at DC because
We're
I've
still
been
being
thrilled.
published. Yeah, we're still publishing comic books through DC. We have
Okay. I
the
heard
Shadow.
Joe Illidge. Joe Illidge
Yeah,
is going to do Shadow Cabinet, right?
yes, yeah, he's done Shadow Cabinet, and it's brilliant. I did the covers for all 4 issues.
Great.
Like,
I talked to Reggie, the was it Hardware and Icon?
yes.
That he did so yeah, I talked to Reggie Hudlin about that, which was fantastic. Oh, there you go. Look at that. Outstanding, man. Ugh.
Well, you say that to all the girls. So.
Nice. They're not as pretty as you, Dennis. No, no. Absolutely, man. No, this is great. And
Yeah,
I'm
that was
and
a
I'm really
cover. That
glad
was
to
a
hear
cover
it.
to number. That was a cover to number 4. So
Okay.
all the
Excellent.
characters jumping out
So
at you.
have they regularly still been coming out, or is it, when you
No,
got,
no, no,
yeah,
no,
tell me
no.
about scheduling for it.
After the last thing we did, Hardware versus Icon and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Took a break, and now we're bringing stuff back. So the first thing we're bringing back is Shadow Cabinet. The second thing we're bringing back is, I'm not going to tell you. It's a surprise.
All right.
But if you thought about it, it wouldn't be such a surprise. It's our most popular character. So
Okay.
he made a return.
Do you want to still do interiors, or are you just doing covers now? I mean,
I'm still doing interiors.
okay.
I'm still doing comics. I'm working on
Sure.
right now I'm working on a thing called Illuminati for
For
AWA.
Marvel? Or
No, for
oh no,
AWA.
oh great, Axel's
Artists and
group, right?
writers. Yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah.
Axel's company.
Yeah.
Bill Sienkiewicz and I are doing it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, Brian Edward Hill wrote it.
I love
And
Brian. Another
Yeah,
great,
he's a great
brilliant
writer.
writer.
And
Great writer.
Bill Sienkiewicz and I are illustrating it. So I've
Oh,
done
that's
3
great.
issues. I'm working on the 4th issue as we speak. And it's for 5 issue series. So I got, 2 issues to go. And
Is it out yet, or is it has been scheduled yet?
Kickstarter ended last week. We met our goal, did everything,
Oh,
you know. So you can look it up. It's
well,
just called Illuminati or Black Illuminati. You'll see.
well, I'm embarrassed that whoever was doing publicity for AEW didn't contact me because
They should have.
yeah, man. Oh no, and you really when Axel first hit the market with that stuff, no, they were contacting me all the time. I have a lot of respect for Axel, another great
Axel's great.
editorial
Trust me, it was an
creator.
oversight. It wasn't like it
Oh, it's
wasn't.
cool.
And I
No,
haven't.
it's all good.
I'm trying to think of if I've even done a ton of interviews around Illuminati. The biggest thing I did around Illuminati was a couple of weeks ago. I was in New York with Charlemagne the God.
Really, the podcasts are
Yeah,
fantastic. Go on.
yeah. The one was with Kamala Harris, Charlemagne the God.
Oh, that's great, man.
Yeah, and it was me and Axel and Charlemagne, and Charlemagne's one of the backers of the project
Wow, that's great.
of Illuminati. So we did a whole big New York Comic Con panel, packed,
I
you know,
bet.
just
So
talking
wait, was Kamala at the panel, or was she just
about
in New York hanging out or whatever?
no,
Well,
Kamala
yeah,
was
not hanging out. She's very busy,
yeah,
obviously.
Kamala was nowhere near. He had just interviewed her the week before.
I see.
Um,
Yes,
um, um, so it was interesting just being on a stage with him.
I
You know,
bet.
being on stage with a real celebrity. It's different.
But well, that's great that he's back in the project and everything. So
Yeah.
was he a fan? Did he, is
Yeah,
he
no,
hip
he's a
to
big comic book fan, big fan of Brian, big fan of mine,
cool?
big fan of Bill's, a big, huge comic book fan, wants to promote Black people in comics. This is his way of doing it. It's very simple.
That's great. No, that's wonderful. So, um, is everything going the way you want it to with Milestone now? I mean, it's great that you guys have the relationship with Warner's. The last time we talked was for the documentary, which I thought was very well made.
Thank
And
you.
you obviously, well, and beyond the product that you guys are making, again, Milestone very involved with developing new talent
Yes,
and introducing us to new talent and everything. So all that's still going the way that you want it to
yes,
go.
yes, 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 it really is. We're
That's
still
cool.
working with new talent. We've got a great, great person with Joe Illidge working with us. So we're very happy about that. And we're just doing
Is
stuff.
is Joe beyond writing Shadow Cabinet? Is he editing or anything? I know he was a editor as well at DC
We have
for
big
and
plans.
other
We
places.
have we have plans for Joe Illidge. So
Cool.
that's all I'll
All right,
say.
good deal. As soon as he announced that he's doing Shadow Cabinet, I'm like, oh, I got to get in touch with Joe and get him back
Yeah, he's
because
great. We think he's
last time I talked
phenomenal.
to him was when he was doing stuff for heavy metal and everything.
We
A
think he's
couple.
phenomenal. We think he's great.
Oh yeah, no, he's excellent, man. No, and I'm really glad Reggie. Reggie wasn't part of the original group. He came later, Reggie Hudlin, right?
Reggie was not part of the original group, though he was there at the formation of the original group, was asked to join and couldn't because he was doing a movie called House Party or Boomerang. No, he was doing Boomerang, doing Boomerang.
Okay, okay,
So he just
both
did
great
not have the
movies.
time, wanted to get into it, but just couldn't do it. So no, he was there. He remembers meeting all of us, meeting with Dwayne, all of us.
Well, anytime Reggie dips back into comics, I'm very happy, man. No,
Yeah,
he's a hell of a writer,
yeah,
and also, man, I always the original House Party. No disrespect to LeBron, I understand. Maybe you got to update everything for a new generation.
the original
House
House
Party is
Party is
just
great.
yeah, man. It's just flat out a great teen movie. And Robin Harris, the
Yes,
man who played the father. Oh
yes,
my God. I mean,
yes.
the most relatable father in a teen comedy that just, I don't want my kid to screw up and I just want my house to be in order. And I he
Reggie's
was so
also
great.
Reggie's also responsible for one of the first Black animated features, Bebe's Kids.
I loved about Robin Harris's
Right,
act. Yeah.
right. And I designed those characters for Bebe's Kids.
Oh, wow, that's great, man. That's
Yeah,
great. Did you ever
better
did you
better
ever
animators came on after and really cleaned them up, but I did those initial designs. Kid with the
wow.
with the flies, the kid looking like Ice Cube with the hoodie, all that shit.
Was now sadly did Mr. Harris pass away before you
Yes,
got okay, yeah. Because I know there was also concert stand-up footage of Robin and everything in the
right.
movie. Yeah,
Right.
man, what a oh no, I love Baby's Kids, another great fucking
Yeah,
animated thing. That's
yeah.
great, man. Jesus. That's amazing. Um I mean, again, right now, is Michael still putting the book together as far as
But
your
the
art of
yes,
Dennis
yeah,
Miller?
no, it's put together. The book is
Okay,
put
okay.
together. I mean, yeah, no, it's put together. So now it's just, getting these stretch goals and then literally printing the book, and
Well, of
getting all
course.
that stuff, fulfillment.
Are you sending it to China? Or it's going to be on the slow boat?
I think he's sending it to China. That's
Sure.
all his stuff. You got to ask him. He's in
All
charge
right,
of.
fair enough.
I'm serious. If
I-
you get me involved, I'll reject everything. So don't ask me.
is are there going to be, because again, it's a career retrospective, but are there going to be new things in the book as well
Yeah,
that
yeah. There's some new
okay,
stuff. There's stuff that certainly a lot of art that no one's ever seen, and some stories
excellent,
no one has ever heard. So yes,
outstanding. No, thrilling. Dennis, we're all excited, man. When you and Michael announced this, and that's why I'm not surprised that the response has been so positive.
I'm
And
I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude from people and their response and how much love that we've seen to have gotten for this project. It's been really very gratifying to me and very special to me. Just
That's
I just want
excellent,
to
man.
thank everybody because it's just been overwhelmingly just a great experience so far. So
Well, people still have time to join the
yep, they
campaign.
certainly
There's
do. It's still going
3
on
weeks
3
to
more
go.
weeks.
Yeah,
Please get on board, get your copy. We'll be happy to give you one.
absolutely. Please come back because
I
it's
will.
always great to talk to you.
Thank you,
And
sir.
and absolutely, it's wonderful to see you and continued success. And I'm thrilled that you're doing this and that we've got some cool milestone stuff coming
Yes.
up in the months ahead. So that and again, another excuse to talk to Joe again.
Yeah, right.
If you don't mind, as we wrap up, I had something I wanted to ask you off the
Sure.
air.
Okay.
All right, beautiful. But thank you, Dennis Cowan. Thank you for
Thank you.
everybody listening and watching. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.